It has only been a few days since Digital Print for Packaging Europe 2021, an event that had become usual for many of us every year in December. But this year, the event took place online, in a virtual mode rather than as a physical conference, as it was planned until a few weeks ago. To talk about the digital print for packaging, its future prospects, its achievements, its objectives, I invited Sean Smyth. Sean is many things to me. He's an analyst, he's a consultant, he's also a great moderator, and he's a print expert at Smithers. Sean is also the co-chairman and a member of the advisory board of Digital Print for Packaging. So, hi, Sean, welcome, and thanks for accepting my invitation.
Lorenzo, thank you so much for that those kind words. I'm delighted to be here to share some of the information and the insights and findings from the recent event, which, as you so rightly say, was online rather than in person in Amsterdam, unfortunately.
Thanks, Sean. And first of all, even if most people in our industry know you, can you quickly introduce yourself and can you tell me what you do exactly at Smithers and what you do at Digital Print for Packaging?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm sure there are more than one or two people who don't know me. I'm Sean Smyth. I'm a print technologist. And I've been in the industry for many years. I've worked in large companies, I've worked in small companies, I've owned companies in printing and packaging and print management. And I act as an analyst and a consultant at Smithers. And we produce a print database that contains detailed print data on many countries, looking at different prospects for print packaging, looking for different prospects of the different print processes involved. And I get involved in preparing that database, and we use that as the basis for many of the reports that we publish, several of which I write, including the recent digital print for packaging to 2026, that has forecasts about the growth prospects for electrophotography and inkjet in labels and packaging. The digital print for packaging event has now been going since 2010. And we hold one of them in the USA, usually in the summer, and then one in Europe, which is normally in the first week of December. And this one was actually in the second week of December. It was virtual. We had something of the order of 150 attendees, which is probably a few down on what we would have had had the event actually taken place live in Amsterdam. And we covered a range of topics with some fantastic speakers from the brands, from converters, and from suppliers to the industry for equipment, inks and substrates and paper and things like that.
Thanks, Sean. And let's get a little bit into the 2021 edition, and let's start with some figures, if you can, of course, disclose them. How did it work? How many visitors? How many interactions, in particular, did you get compared to the in-person event?
It's difficult to say that because the event was co-located with our e-commerce packaging event. In total, there were about 270 attendees. We ran it on something called the Hubelo platform, which is a social media platform which allows interactions. And in that platform, the person with the most interactions is on a leaderboard. And our winner was somewhere in the region of 850 interactions. Now, an interaction is a message, or it's attending an event, attending a session, or setting up either one-to-one networking or a networking room and attending a networking room. I suspect that some people found it probably more intuitive and more easy to interact than they would in person. Others, such as myself, perhaps, finds it a little strange to be in a virtual event, talking and listening to people. But I had a number of people contacting me and had a number of interesting discussions. And I also wanted to talk to many of the attendees to find out their experiences and what they're doing. It's not the same as face-to-face, but it's an awful lot better than it was a year ago and in the pre-pandemic. So it was felt, or within Smithers, we were disappointed that the event didn't take place. But I think we were reasonably happy with the number of attendees and certainly the level of expertise among the attendees.
Let's talk instead about the conference program that normally includes a speech by, for example, brand owners, agencies, converters, manufacturers of equipment and consumables, and and your sponsors, of course. Which key topics populated the agenda of the conference this year, and which topics, on the contrary, are maybe a little bit fading out from the well-established program?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because as the conference has matured and grown up, alongside the digital print for packaging sector that's grown up, the conversations, the topics that we cover are changing significantly. What we focus on is the business impacts of digital packaging and how that can change end consumer experiences, how brands can capitalize on the new technologies and do new things and do new campaigns and change the way that they use their packaging, change some of the functions of the packaging. I think a couple of the big trends that came out this year was sustainability. It was being covered everywhere. It's the key driver for all packaging in 2021, is the impact that we're having on the environment and how we can take steps to minimize our environmental impact. And there seemed to be quite a lot of traction using digital print that can give us some helps in there. When the conference first started, we were very focused on the technology, but the technology just works now. So yes, it's interesting to hear about company X launching a new machine that's 10% faster or 15% wider, or it does something in different ways, but that's not the focus. It's how brands and converters can use this new technology in ways that help them create value for themselves, value for their companies, and value for their brands, and helps them grow and helps them become more profitable. And it's the interaction of these business models and the changes that are happening in workflow, in artwork production, color management, routes to market with more online ordering of labels now coming into packaging, and companies starting to do this. And all of those things are growing. The other thing that came out, and it was co-located, as I say, with our e-commerce packaging, is the rise in e-commerce and some of the drivers that those are putting onto the packaging sector. So, for example, we had heard from Tetra Pak and Tim, and they were both talking about the ability to provide some unique coding onto packaging to allow it to become connected across the supply chain. And Tim is one of the pioneers of corrugated liner printing with the HPT 1100 series machines. And one of the things that they shared was that they could reduce their minimum order quantities by up to 90%. and reduce the time to market for their products by 70%. And these are significant changes. And as these changes come through, you'll see different drivers on the remaining analog equipment, flexo, litho. How do they respond? How do they come out? Because everything is being focused on improving the packaging experience for consumers and improving and changing supply chains to meet these consumer demands.
Sean, digital printing, digital print technology, which gives this event its name, has been let me define it, a novelty for years, for many years. Today, digital printing is taken for granted by many. How long do you think it will continue to attract interest, and why?
Well, I would say that digital print for packaging is a great deal more than just a novelty. Smithers numbers show sort of growth rates of 12, 15% over the next 5 years. And in that time, it's going to grow to become $25 billion, which I think is significant. It's a small part of the overall packaging market, but it's a significant part of the value. And the reason I think it's taken a little bit of time for digital to become established as a mechanism is that there has been continuing improvements in analog print for packaging. Flexo quality is improving significantly. Litho, very widely used in cartons, becoming extremely efficient, very low waste, very fast turnaround, and with large format machines, useful for a lot of low to medium range production. But what is changing, I think, is the fact that the supply chains themselves are digitizing. And so information is passing much faster between a point of sale at a large supermarket, or almost back to the board manufacturer. You can have direct links so that people can better forecast demand and can move through the supply chain. And the manufacturing part of the supply chain at packaging converters is having to change accordingly. We're seeing some brands looking at taking packaging in-house again. The Philip Morris International for high volume cigarettes using inkjet is growing apace. There was a very interesting talk from Tetra Pak. And they have a Koenig & Bauer Rotajet machine in Dallas, and that's now coming on stream after a bit of a COVID-impacted startup. And they're very positive about the benefits that digital print can give them. There's also growth in digital finishing. And when we start seeing more fully digital manufacturing chains using maybe laser cutting, using the cut and creasing devices that companies like Hycon, Macarbox, Bobst with their relationship with Sci Laser, you're going to see fully digital manufacturing of packaging, including the printing. And that allows brands, converters and companies that do it to be far more flexible, far more reactive, reducing time to market, reducing minimum order quantities, and doing new things with packaging. And they developing supply chains and developing business models, still in the early stages now. But as the technology has grown up and matured, and we're not talking anymore about the benefit of electrophotography or the benefit of inkjet or issues with inkjet artifacts, because there's solutions to that. It's now looking at the business model, and the business model for converters, for brands, for retailers can be significantly improved through the use of digital print for packaging. And that's why it's growing. And it's as it's maturing, the conversation, as I say, has changed. And it's the business impact, it's the business models. How do I use this to help my business grow? And there are lots of examples of small brands, of converters, for example, our friends at EPAC, who are seeing significant growth and are attracting investment from the high volume analog users with the investment that they had in one of their new facilities in Australia from Amcor, for example. But themselves, they've become $100 billion operation with probably 25, 27 sites. Every time I look at the news feeds, I see they're opening a new facility in Australia, in Indonesia, in the UK, and in Poland. It's a fantastic success story. And how they're doing that is one of the things that we're trying to understand and see if other people can do similar things and how they ought to react and what the changing customer demands on packaging are going to be. So yes, the topics are changing. Another one that came out this year that's seen as an issue for many analog packaging suppliers is the ability to attract and retain good staff and the people issues. As we all know, having good people is absolutely critical to the success of any business. They're by far your greatest resource. I wouldn't necessarily say they're an asset because you can't buy and sell them as many people seem to think they can. But attracting young, smart, clever people to the industry is probably going to be easier to do if you do it through the use of high-tech systems. And that's not just at the printing and finishing stage, but also in the workflow and in the distribution mechanisms, working with small and large brands to help them solve their problems. And that's where we are at the moment with digital print for packaging, I think.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the in-depth explanation and for the many examples that, in fact, make absolutely clear what the digital print for packaging name is and means. And if you agree, let's talk for a moment about your digital print for packaging proprietary content. Every year, for example, you personally introduce market data, market trends, pulled out from the Smithers reports that you personally prepare, that you personally edit. How crucial to such a conference or to any show is creating and owning the content and being able to present and to master all this information?
Within Smithers, we focus, as I said before, on creating our database that shows the market values, market volumes in inkjet, in electrophotography, in cartons, corrugated labels, in flexible packaging, on printing onto glass, printing onto metal, and printing onto rigid plastics. And yes, I did share the numbers and our forecasts of the numbers. We think it's important to base the decisions that a business makes as best they can on fact. Now, we're pretty sure that our market data is as good as it can be. We are continually refining it, continually checking it, and we produce forecasts. And whereas I wouldn't ever suggest that I'm going to be totally accurate to within a few $100,000 of what the market value for digital labels in Slovenia or Italy or one of the ways is, the trends have proven to be very good over the years, and our track record is extremely good. And we get a lot of feedback from companies looking to develop equipment, from feedback from converters looking to get into changing different methods of manufacturing on how they should do, what should they be looking at. And one of the key things that we do is we track cost of production, looking at the unit cost, the overall annual cost, and the profit opportunity for litho, for flexo, gravure, for electrophotography, and inkjet. And we put all of this stuff together, and they form the basis of our market data and our forecasts going forward. And then we try to tell a story about what is happening on this. And a couple of key things that you have to bear in mind are that as the technology changes, that's great. But what it does do is it changes the unit cost of production and the economics of production. And that economic driver is the key thing that companies involved in print manufacture and packaging manufacture consider. And they will try to use the most economic methods of production because it gives them the best opportunity to win new work and grow as a business, and two, to hopefully make some money. And what we have seen over many years is this has been proven to be correct. So as people invest in the digital label press, as they invest in their digital carton press and are now investing in corrugated, they can make an economic case that this technology works. And this is one of the questions that we raised at a few of the conference sessions. And a great response we got was from Ted Simotis of HP. And Jose Herrera from EFI said exactly the same thing, which is they now have significant numbers of customers who have second machines, third machines, and fourth machines. And as Ted says, these guys don't buy their multiple machines just because they like HP or EFI as a vendor, although I'm sure there is an element of that in there, of course. They do it because it's economically sensible for them to do it. And those are one of the benefits, we think, of framing the strategies and the way that the industry is going based on fact wherever we can.
Okay. And Sean, as we already mentioned, if many were expecting a certain return to normal after the recent peaks of the pandemic, the conference audience couldn't physically meet in Amsterdam. And which impact do you think this situation had on the amount of attendees and their actual participation in the daily program, in the quality of their enjoyment regarding all the content that were presented during the conference? What feedback did you get from the audience?
I think in general, most people that I talked to and got involved with, like me, were disappointed that they could not be there. One of the benefits of doing it online is obviously there's no travel and you can choose to do chunks and keep doing some of the work yourselves. The content is available to the attendees. I'm not sure how long it's going to be up there for, but you can go back, re-look at what did that person say, what did they do. We offer the presentations to all of the attendees, and we invite them to put a survey up. I haven't seen the results of that survey yet, but hopefully there'll be some insights there. It's not the same as being there in person, looking at the exhibits of the sponsors, talking to people who you don't know that you bump into when you have a plate of a sandwich and maybe a glass of beer at one of the receptions. And you have, I find that the most useful thing, I suppose, is joining people that I don't know and talking and meeting people and finding out. And there's, unfortunately, that wasn't as good as it could be. But as I say, talking and listening to discussions in the chat rooms and around the chat tables, a few interesting things sort of coming out of there, what some of the board and paper manufacturers are doing and how they're getting over the current issues of supply chain for materials that we're seeing, and how that might change over the next few years, and seeing a range of things. So sadly, it wasn't as dynamic, I suppose, is probably the best word, as it would have been being there in person. But I think that as a second best alternative, I think it's far better than not having the event and not being able to be there at all.
Absolutely.
And we're hoping that our next version will be a physical event. It's forecast or planned, I should say, to take place in June. I don't think we've finalized the dates yet, but I think it's going to be in Santa Monica in California in June next year. And hopefully by then, we will be in a situation as an industry to sort of meet again in person. Smithers have run several conferences. I think the issue with the Netherlands and the new Omicron variant were unfortunately sent to try us.
Yeah. In fact, you highlighted this aspect in my eyes, or in our eyes, I believe. In the eyes of everyone, conferences and technical seminars have always been an opportunity for good networking. No, you mentioned it, coffee breaks, couple of beers, evening drinks, and to what extent do you believe this situation, this format, these virtual formats are penalizing or are completely destroying this aspects?
I don't think they're completely destroying it. We are finding new ways to meet, and I have set up various calls, and I am having discussions. I had a couple of calls last week, and I have a couple of calls this week, and a few in the new year now, to follow up and to find out about some of the developments and some of the activities, and several people have contacted me asking me to some questions and what can they do. So it's not as good as doing it there and then, and I still regret not having business cards. One of the things that we do is we ran a workshop before the event. This is a virtual workshop. And I talk about packaging industry in general and why digital print is growing, share some numbers and share some cases and look at the technology in a little bit more depth. And that is usually a good way of creating interaction and networking. And I think we had about 20 people at the workshop this year. And I've received about 14 emails requesting for the presentation of the slides and further questions. There's a question and answer session. So people have chat boxes and they have the ability to ask questions. And one of the things that we have tried to do is any questions that could not be answered at the time. And one of the difficulties with the online event is you can't sort of wave at a speaker and say, "Can you please finish in 2 minutes?" And I haven't quite found a way yet of interrupting a speaker to tell them, right, your time is up. But we had to sort of keep to time. So we promised every attendee that if you ask a question and it wasn't covered in during the talk, that we would put your contact details, if you allowed us to the speaker, and they would get back to you after the event. And there were public forums on the thing where questions and answers that were asked anonymously got answered on there as well. So not as good as face-to-face, but better than many of the other ones, I think.
Good to hear. And Sean, let me enter for a moment, if you agree, into the economics. Any conference that offers its audience a good overall experience need money, need a budget, and this kind of conference is only possible thanks to sponsors, thanks to exhibitors, as you mentioned. And Digital Print for Packaging has always received a great support from a relevant group of brands, of technology brands in particular. How much the pandemic and the risk of much lower attendance is affecting the behavior of these guys? What feedback did they give you?
I tend not to get involved with the economics of the conference per se. I'm sure that Smithers is disappointed that our numbers are down because obviously they gain revenue from attendees paying to attend the conference, and as you said, there are opportunities for sponsors, and we invite technology demonstrations and as well, and those are probably down. Events for Smithers have been very badly affected, as you can imagine, by the pandemic over the past couple of years. But I don't know if it's surprising or not, but our consultancy business has done extremely well over the past few years. I've been probably busier than I have been for many years in there. And our reports go very well. And what Smithers does is, as well as just looking at the conference as a standalone thing in isolation, Smithers has members, and what we do is we sell membership packages, and that membership package gives you access to a consultant for a certain period of time. It gives you a report or a number of reports that you can use within your organization, and it gives you a number of places at conferences for your staff, or you're happy to bring your customers along if that is useful to you. So it's not in isolation, the events. It's part of the sort of membership packages. And they seem to be going quite well, because one thing that we have noticed during the pandemic is that as people are not traveling so much, and as people are in lockdowns, is many of the managements of brands, of converters, of suppliers have had time to think strategically about the future of their business. And when you do that, that's when information and market data and insights are particularly valuable. And we spent quite a lot of time working with companies to do that, and we're expanding our network and sort of getting more subject experts such as myself and the people in different sectors that I probably am no expert in, to help our customers move forward.
Sean, you mentioned already the program for digital print for packaging US next year, hopefully a in-person event. Do you believe that on the other end, that 100% virtual, as you did it for the Europe this autumn, or even a hybrid solution would be a good option for the future not just in the short term, not just in this pandemic situation, but in the long term?
Potentially, a hybrid conference may be useful. It's what we did with digital print for packaging in the US, in Phoenix in June this year. And also, we launched the digital print for packaging in Asia. We had an event in Tokyo, which I attended virtually and spoke at virtually in October. So I suppose that having a hybrid version, it adds a little bit of complexity to the organization. But we now have the tools that allow us to do it in a sensible and a smooth way that works. And people, I think, are now more used to virtual events and online, as well as being in person. My preference would be to sort of move to the physical event if we can do. But the whole world is digitizing. And more of your time, whether it be professionally or personally, is spent with devices that communicate in different ways. And I suppose it's natural that the conferences will do this. There will be some people, for whatever reason, cannot afford to take the time necessary to travel to an area. So for me to go to Los Angeles, it'll probably be at least 4 or 5 days. I would probably try and do something else while I'm out there, visit some customers and maybe visit some interesting technology suppliers. But it would be a week usually for me out of my schedule. Whereas virtually, it's 2 days solid, and then a few more timings afterwards or before the event for networking. And so you can cram a lot into a virtual event and a hybrid event as well. And I suspect that some things will change, and if it works and some people like them, and maybe the travel budget isn't as much as it was in the last year, and so maybe we can boost attendance both physically and virtually.
And Sean, many events, claim or aspire to be aggregators of an entire community. I mean, not only conferences, even trade shows, but in reality, they happen once a year. To what extent digital print for packaging, or does digital print for packaging aim to be not a once a year, but a all year long platform for the global packaging industry?
I don't think that we would ever suggest that that we are the preferred source for all of the industry to come together across the year. I think that having the events and seeing the number of players, most of the significant players do attend the conference. Many of them are part of the advisory boards that we have for the European, Asian, and North American, US version in there. So we have many contacts in there. And many people use me as a conduit. They like to talk to brands. They like to do some voice of the customer work, or they like to sort of understand a little bit more about how some of the competitors are doing, and a whole variety of things. But I don't think we would sort of put ourselves down as being the overall sort of platform of choice for the event. I think that what we are is a bellwether. So every 6 months or so, you have the opportunity to take a little time out of your schedule and come and talk to people in brands. And we encourage believers in the technology, obviously, and good experiences. But equally, we encourage people who don't think it's a very good idea. So we have people who do not use digital print for packaging. Maybe some of them change their minds, or maybe some of them say, no, it's not necessarily going to be for us. But we like to hear why they're not doing that, what the difficulties are within their organization for them to change from one way of producing packaging to another way in there. So I don't think we're not smart enough to be the packaging platform of choice for the industry, and we're certainly not silly enough to think that we are the important only source there. But what we are is a good way of broadening your network, understanding what the technology can do for you as a business, to support your objectives, to help you grow and to help you make money.
And have you already planned a path to 2022 for your visitors, for your sponsors, for the exhibitors? I don't know, are you maybe still hiring speakers for the sessions, still checking I don't know what's the best topics are for the US and the European edition next year. So, how people can probably better join the digital print for packaging program for next year, or I don't know, get on board.
We have held the first advisory board meeting. Was held just before the event, actually, the European event for North America. We will be going through, we allow the attendees to download, as I say, the proceedings, but we put a survey in there. And as soon as those survey results, that will be the first thing that we do after the 2021, to do a post-mortem. What could we have done better? What did the visitors like? What did they think was good? What was not so good? And hopefully allow us to improve that. But yes, the topics for next year are under discussion by the advisory board. We have a number of ideas on how the business process is developing. We are inviting speakers, and these are people who've got real business experience with brands, with converters, using technology to do things in different ways, to invite them to come and share their experiences if they will do. We're talking to legislators as there's more control over packaging, there's more connected packaging, the impacts of security and track and trace across the connected packaging community. What does this actually mean? How can we explain this? How can people get real world examples of how their packaging has to change to meet new sustainability benefits, to meet new legislative requirements? And a whole range of things like that are happening, and that will take place over the next few months. We're having meetings and discussions formally as a group, but equally, I am in conversation with people saying, would you like to come along and present? I know that you have an interesting new bit of technology in your business. Tell us how it's going. Tell us what the unexpected things are. Tell us how it's benefiting you as a company or not benefiting you as a company. What did you have to change? How do you attract the right staff? How do you motivate them? Can you use people who were previously on analog equipment, or do you have to move into a totally new group of people? And all of these things will happen. Then probably in the spring, we will finalize the content for the US one. At that time, the Far East one, the Asian one will sort of be coming into plan. I sit on the advisory board for all three of them. All of the other people are different for the different events. I think, with the possible exception of Debbie Thorpe, who's on both Europe and Asia. So we share what the other conferences are doing. We get good ideas. And because I have a slight profile in the industry, people occasionally contact me and ask me, we are doing this. Do you think it's something that the conference will be interested in? And always, we invite the people to come, and if they have interesting things that they are doing, and they have things to say, please come along and tell us, explain why it's important, how you as a company did this, and how you're benefiting from it.
Okay, Sean, thank you very much for your time and for the many insights and the previews on the digital print for packaging for the near future of this interesting event, and long life to packaging.
I think a long life to packaging, absolutely, and probably even a longer life to digital packaging. Lorenzo, thank you so much for your time and inviting me to talk to you.